This is $10,000. With that kind of money, you could get yourself a nice used car. Or how about this? 10 iPhones for the whole family. But how many iPhones is your life worth? 100, 1,000, 10,000? You might think, what a crazy question. How can you measure life in iPhones? It's priceless, right? Well, think about this. How do doctors decide when keeping someone alive gets too expensive? Or how do judges figure out how much money to give a family for a lost loved one? Believe it or not, there are many ways to calculate the value of a human life in dollars. You're about to find out how much you're worth as a state asset. We'll dive into the value of your internal organs and identify which one is the most valuable. You'll learn about an invention that turned out to be more expensive than a human life. Plus, I'll let you in on how much your relatives could receive if you were to pass away. And whose life is valued the highest? Back in the 80s, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration tried to figure out if it made economic sense to tell people that a dangerous acid was, well, dangerous. Warning labels would cost some money, but they could potentially save a few careless folks from accidentally tasting hydrochloric acid. This sparked a debate about the monetary value of human life. Were the labels worth the cost or not? The study of the value of human life in the context of regulating hazardous substance labeling became a key factor in developing and implementing a concept known as the value of a statistical life, or VSL. This concept is used to evaluate the economic worth of reducing risks of death or injury. Sure, you can say your life is priceless, but there are countless ways in which people put a value on their own lives, like how much they're willing to pay for their safety. Consider this. How much more do people pay for cars with higher safety ratings compared to those with lower ratings? What about life insurance? How much do people buy and under what terms? And then there's the difference in wages between people who take on risky jobs and those who prefer to stay away from danger. Imagine there's a job, a dangerous one like being a miner or a logger, and there's a 1 in 1,000 chance you could die doing it. If you say, I need an extra $6,000 to do this job, then you've just put a price tag on your life. You've decided your life is worth $6 million, statistically speaking. Using this kind of calculation, various U.S. departments have estimated the value of human life to be around $6 to $10 million. But the government also sees us as a resource. The more we work, the more taxes we pay. We can look at the value of human life from the perspective of wage. In the U.S., the minimum you can sell an hour of your life for is $7.25. On average, a person in the States earns around $2 million over a lifetime, not accounting for inflation. Could this be considered the price of a human life? But these are all valuations of your life while you're still able to work, while you're alive. Now let's estimate the value of your life after death when you break down into basic chemical elements. Surprisingly, most of your body is made up of oxygen, and it's pretty cheap. Take an average body weighing 155 pounds. For the 115 pounds of oxygen in your body, you'll only get about $10. Then there's 30 pounds of carbon worth $5, and 5.5 pounds of nitrogen for $10. There's about 2 pounds each of phosphorus and calcium in your body, and together they're worth around $500. All the other elements in our body like silicon, copper, gold, and others, present in minimal amounts, will fetch less than $1. As you can see, in total, your body would be valued at just a little over $500. But seriously, who actually needs your chemical elements? We calculated that just for fun. What really matters are your organs. Before you decompose, your organs are worth a lot. Let's start with what you can legally sell. Blood. 1 pint of blood is worth about $300. For all 10 pints, you'd get $3,000. Not that much? Want more? Here's where things get tricky, because to make real money, you'd have to break the law, as selling organs is illegal in most countries. On the black market, lungs can fetch a whopping $100,000. A heart might be sold together with the lungs or separately for $120,000. Your liver could bring in another $150,000. provided you're not an alcoholic. The retina of an eye goes for $10,000, and kidneys, they're worth $200,000 each. So, if we sold a person completely, how much could we make? If you don't lead the healthiest lifestyle, you're looking at around $500,000, the same amount the U.S. government pays to the family of a deceased soldier. But on the black market, the price for organs from one person could reach several $million. This leads to a rather unsettling thought. Sometimes in death, you're worth more than alive. All it takes is an operating room and a team of medics who, in a few hours, can harvest the organs and store them in refrigerators. As for your brain, no matter how brilliant, it's not needed by anyone but you, so you can keep your brain in a jar as a souvenir. Now, imagine, we invent something that doubles the GDP of all the countries in the world. Sounds incredible, right? We're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars. But here's the twist. Every day, this device will kill 3,000 people. Yes, 3,000 people daily, over 1 million each year. Would countries agree to this? It sounds ridiculous. But what if I tell you they already did, and every country in the world has embraced this invention, the car? Yes, roads are incredibly risky. Every year, 1.3 million people die in car accidents. That's like wiping out the entire population of Dallas or San Diego every single year. But is it worth it? We need to take action. We can't ban cars outright, but can we reduce their speed? This is where economics kicks in. Back in 1974, Gerald Ford introduced the national maximum speed limit of 55 miles per hour. You couldn't have driven faster than that anywhere. Not on a New York freeway, not through the expanses of Texas, nowhere. What happened then? The following year, fatalities decreased by 15%, and 10,000 people returned to their families. Impressive, isn't it? But economically, it wasn't the best decision. The transit of people and goods slowed down. Less money was being made. Headlines read, "The high cost of the 55 miles per hour speed limit." In 1987, realizing the economic impact, they increased the maximum speed to 65 miles per hour. By 1995, the law was completely repealed, leading to an additional 12,500 deaths annually, even more than before. It turns out, cars were economically more valuable than human lives. However, not all car accidents are fatal, and this brings up the next category of questions. How much money can be spent to save a person's life? Back in the 70s, researchers tried to determine the average amount of money needed to preserve a life for a whole year. They called it the Quality Adjusted Life Year. At that time, the cost of it was around $50,000, but today it's closer to $130,000. Of course, this model is based solely on how valuable human life is to the American healthcare system. Here's another interesting example. U.S. Air Force pilots are trained when to eject from a damaged aircraft and when not to. If you eject, you might save your life, but you'll definitely lose the expensive plane. The U.S. Air Force spends around $6 million to train an F-16 pilot and more than $10 million for an F-35 pilot. Meanwhile, an F-16 costs around $30 million, while an F-35 will set you back a whole $100 million. In an emergency, the pilot must decide if there's a good enough chance to save the aircraft, or if it's more practical to eject and at least save themselves. Throughout this video, we've been trying to estimate the value of human life using various data. But in reality, the U.S. Department of Transportation, along with many other organizations, actually does this evaluation annually to help determine what safety measures are suitable for different projects, like highways. As of 2022, the value of a statistical life was set at $12.5 million. Whether this number seems high or low to you, just imagine how it enables decision-making regarding safety. Let's say you're designing a new highway. There are countless measures you could take to make the highway safer for drivers. Add a median, put in a barrier, install lighting. But each of these safety measures increases the cost of the highway, decreasing its feasibility in the first place. In other words, you don't have the budget to ensure no one ever dies on this road. So you have to decide which safety measures are reasonable and which might be excessive. Having a dollar amount for each fatal incident that a safety measure prevents makes it much easier to draw this line. You just need to compare the cost of the measure to the value of the lives it saves. But what if you can't save a life? What should the state do then? Compensate for it. If someone dies in the line of duty, in an accident at work or due to a natural disaster, then their family is entitled to fair compensation, as they've lost their breadwinner. And this raises another contentious issue. Do all lives have the same value? On that same horrific day in the U.S., when nearly 3,000 people died, from bankers to firefighters, a fund was set up to compensate the families of those who perished. The amount of compensation depended on the age and income of the deceased, considering potential promotions. If the person earned less than $20,000 a year, the family received only $500,000. But families of those who earned over $220,000 a year were allocated $7 million. It turns out that the lives of bankers were valued more than those who went to rescue them. It might seem like it should be the other way around, but society decided otherwise. Let's sum it up. As a collection of chemical elements, you're worth about $500. As a set of organs, around $1 million. As a taxpayer, $2 million. As a banker, $7 million. As an F-35 pilot, $10 million. And when building a new highway, the U.S. Department of Transportation values you at a significant $12.5 million. But to your mom, your life is priceless. Let's stop here. Doesn't it seem like we've just sunk into cynicism? We tally up our lives in iPhones or cars, only to finally admit that our life is priceless. But it's actually the opposite. Sure, to the individual, their life is invaluable. We live once, and there's no second chance. However, to society, to others, to the state, we do have value and, accordingly, a price. Cynical? Yes, but in its own way fair. When someone says life is priceless, they often mean it's free, and that someone responsible for a fatal accident or an industrial disaster owes nothing to anyone, but they do. They owe not just their freedom, but also compensation to the victim's family. From this perspective, it's better to have some price, isn't it? Even better to know exactly what that price is. And best of all, not to be afraid to ask ourselves such tough ethical questions, to understand how society and people function.